Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another day of reading through mythology with Daniel. We're wrapped up a storm. We wrapped up a story last time, and we're getting into another one. I hope everybody weathered the storm okay. Nobody is hurt or didn't lose power or property damage. So that's always important. So we're gonna today's story is about Pygmalion and Galatea. And as I keep going, I go along, I'm going to stop and talk about it if I see stuff that needs to be talked about. But anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Let's get to it. The story is told only by Ovid, and the goddess of love is therefore Venus. It is an example of Ovid's way of dressing up a myth, for which see the introduction. Interesting. A gifted young sculptor of Cyprus named Pygmalion was a woman-hater, detesting the faults beyond measure which nature has given to women. He resolved never to marry. His art, he told himself, was enough for him. Nevertheless, the statue he made and devoted all his genius to was that of a woman. Either he could not dismiss what he was so disapproved of from his mind as easily as from his life, or else he was bent on forming the perfect woman and showing men that deficiencies of the kind they had put up with. However, he labored long and devotedly on the statue and produced a most exquisite work of art. But lovely as it was, he could never rest content. He kept on working at it daily under his skillful fingers. It grew more beautiful. No woman ever born, no statue ever made could approach it. When nothing could be added to its perfections, a strange fate had befallen its creator. He had fallen in love, deeply, passionately in love with the thing that he made, with the statue. He fell in love with the statue, okay? It must be said in explanation that the statue did not look like a statue. No one would have thought it was ivory or stone, but warm human flesh, motionless for a moment only. Such was the wondrous power of this disdainful young man. The supreme achievement of art was his, the art of concealing art. But from that time on, the sex he scorned had their revenge. No hopeless lover of a living maiden was ever so desperately unhappy as Pygmalion. He kissed those enticing lips. They could not kiss him back. He caressed her hands, her face. They were unresponsive. He took her in his arms, and she remained a cold, passive form. For the time he tried to pretend, as children do with their toys. He would dress her in rich robes, trying to affect one of the delicate or glowing color after another, and imagine she was pleased. He would bring her gifts, real maiden's love, little birds and gray flowers, and the shining tears of amber. Pantheon's sisters weep, and then dream that she thanks him with eager affection. Poor guy. Maybe you shouldn't hate women so much. He put her to bed at night and tucked her in a soft and warm, that's so sweet, as little girls do to their dolls. But he was not a child. He could not keep on pretending. In the end, he gave up. He loved a lifeless thing, and he utterly and hopelessly wretched. The singular passion did not long remain concealed from the goddess of passionate love. Venus was interested in something that seldom came her way, a new kind of lover. She had determined that to help a young man who could be enamored and yet original. The feast day of Venus was, of course, especially honored in Cyprus. There he is. The island which first received the goddess after she rose from the foam. Snow-white heifers whose horns had been gilded were offered in numbers to her. The heavenly odor of incense was spread through the land for her many altars. Crowds thronged her thronged her temples, not an unhappy lover, but was there with this gift, praying that his love might turn kind. There, too, of course, was Pygmalion. He dared to ask the goddess, only that he might find a maiden like the statue. But Venus knew what he really wanted, and as a sign that she favored his prayer to the flame of the altar, he stood before, leaped up 3 times, blazing into the air. Very thoughtful as this good omen, Pygmalion sought his house and his love, the thing he had created and given his heart to. There she stood on her pedestal, interestingly beautiful. He caressed her, and then he started back. It was a self-deception, or did she really feel warm to his touch? He kissed her lips, a long, lingering kiss, and felt them grow soft beneath his. He touched her arms, her shoulders. Their hardness vanished. It was like watching wax soften in the sun. He clasped her wrists. Blood was pulsing there. Venus, he thought, this is the goddess doing, and with unutterable. Okay, gratitude and joy. He put his arms around his love and saw her smile into his eyes and blush. See, it worked out well, this story. Venus herself graced their marriage with her presence. But what happened after that, we do not know, except that Pygmalion named the maiden Galatea, and that their son, Paphos, whatever, gave his name to Venus's favorite city. That's great. So this one is Bacchus and Philemon. So we're gonna try this one, see what it's about. And if y'all like this stuff, please let me know if this is interesting for you guys, or if not. So that's gonna help out tremendously. In the hill country, there were once 2 trees which all the peasants near and far pointed out as a great marvel. And no wonder, for one was an oak and the other a linden. Yet they grew from a single trunk. The story of how this came is proof of the immeasurable power of the gods, and also the way they reward and humble and the pious. Reward the humble and the pious. Okay, yeah. Sometimes when Jupiter was tired of eating ambrosia and drinking nectar up in Olympus, and every little weary of listening to Apollo's lyre and watching the Graces dance, he would come down to earth, disguise himself as a mortal, and go looking for adventures. His favorite companion on these tours was Mercury, the most entertaining of all the gods, the shrewdest and most resourceful. On this particular trip, Jupiter had determined to find out how hospitable the people of this hill country were. Hospitality was, of course, very important to him, since all guests, all who seek shelter in a strange land, were under his special protection. The 2 gods accordingly took on the appearance of poor wayfarers and wandered through the land, knocking at each lowly hut or great house they came to, asking for food and a place to rest. Not one would admit them. Every time they were dismissed insolently, and the door barred against them. They made trial of hundreds, all treated them in the same way. At last they came upon a little hovel of the humblest sort, poorer than any they had yet found, with a roof made of only reeds. But here, when they knocked, the door was opened wide, and a cheerful voice bade them enter. They had to stoop to pass through the low entrance, but once inside they found themselves in a snug and very clean room, where a kindly-faced old man and woman welcomed them in the friendliest fashion and bustled about to make them comfortable. The old man set a bench near a fire and told them to stretch out on it and rest their tired limbs. And the woman threw a soft covering over it. Her name was Bacchus. She told the strangers that her husband was called Philemon. I forgot again. They had lived in that cottage all their merry life and always been happy. We are poor folks, she said, but poverty isn't so bad when you're willing to own up to it. And a contented spirit is a great help too. All the while she was talking, she was very busy doing things for them. The coals under the ashes of the dark hearth, as she fanned to life until a cheerful fire was burning. Over this she had hung a little kettle full of water, and just as it began to boil, her husband came in with a fine cabbage he had got from their garden. Into the kettle it went, and with a piece of pork which was hanging from one of the beams. While this cooked, Bacchus set the table with her trembling old hands. One table leg was too short, but she propped it up with a bit of a broken dish. On the board she placed olives and radishes and several eggs which she had roasted in the ashes. By this time the cabbage and bacon were done, and the old man pushed 2 rickety couches up to the table and bade his guests recline and eat. Presently he brought them cups of beechwood and an earthenware mixing bowl, which he had held some wine very like vinegar, plentiful diluted with water. He, however, was clearly proud and happy at being able to add such cheer to the supper, and he kept on the watch to refill each cup as soon as it was emptied. Hey, those 2 old folks are probably like, they never get people over. The 2 old folks were so pleased and excited by the success of their hospitality that only very slowly a strange thing dawned upon them. The mixing bowl kept full, no matter how many cups were poured out of it. The level of wine stayed the same, up to the brim. As they saw this wonder, each looked in terror at each other, and dropping their eyes, they prayed silently. Then in quivering voices and trembling all over, they begged their guests to pardon their poor refreshments they had offered. "We have a goose," the old man said, "which we ought to have given your lordships. But if you will only wait, it shall be done at once." To catch the goose, however, proved beyond their powers. They tried in vain until they were worn out, while Jupiter and Mercury watched them greatly entertained. Of course they were. Of course they were entertained. The gods. Watching people run around doing stuff is probably fun for them. But when the husband and wife had to give up the chase, panting and exhausted, the gods felt that the time had come for them to take action. They were clearly very kind. "You have been hosts to gods," they said, "and you shall have your reward. This wicked country, which despises the poor stranger, will be bitterly punished, but not you." They then escorted the 2 out of the hut and told them to look around them. To their amazement, all they saw was water. The whole countryside had disappeared. A great lake surrounded them. Their neighbors had not been good to the old couple. Nevertheless, standing there, they wept for them, but of the sudden their tears were dried by an overwhelming wonder. Before their eyes, the tiny, lowly hut, which had been their home for a long time, was turned into a stately pillared temple of the whitest marble with a golden roof. Well, that's good for them. That's great. "Good people," Jupiter said, "ask whatever you want, and you shall have your wish." The old people exchanged 100 whispers. Then the husband spoke. "Let us be your priests, guarding this temple for you. And oh, since we have lived so long together, let neither of us ever have to live alone. Grant that we may die together." The gods assented, well pleased with the 2. A long time they served in that grand building, and the story does not say whether they missed their cozy room with the cheerful hearth, but one day, standing before the marble and the golden magnificence, they fell to talking about the former life, which had been so hard and yet so happy. By now both were in extreme old age. Suddenly, as they exchanged memories, each saw the other putting 4 leaves. What does the 4 leaves thing mean? Then bark was growing around them. They had time only to cry, "Farewell, dear companion." As the words passed their lips, they became trees, but they still were together. The linden and the oak grew from that trunk. Oh, that's okay. From far and wide, people came to admire the wonder, and always wreaths of flowers hung on the branches in honor of the pious and the faithful pair. That's great. That's a great story. It's like these people that had nothing to give, offered these people in and gave them stuff that they didn't really have to give. But they get rewarded in the end, so that's good. I think that's good. This is a story about Endymion. This youth, whose name is so famous, has a very short history. Some of the poets say he was a king, some a hunter, but most of them say he was a shepherd. All agree that his youth of surpassing beauty and that this was the cause of his singular fate. Endymion, the shepherd, and his flock he guarded. She, the moon, Selene, saw him, loved him, sought him, coming down from heaven to glade on Latmus, kissed him, lay beside him, blessed his fortune, evermore his slumbers, tossing not nor turning. Endymion, the shepherd. He never woke to see the shining silvery from the bending over him. In all the stories about him, he sleeps forever, immortal, but never conscious. Wondrously beautiful, he lies on the mountainside, motionless and remote as if in death, but warm and living. And night after night, the moon visits him and covers him with her kisses. It is said that this magic slumber was her doing. She lured him to sleep so that she may always find him and caress him as she pleased. But it is sad, too, that her passion brings her only burden of pain fraught with many sighs. That was it. That's a short story. Very, very short. I ain't got much to say about that one. That seemed a little too short. All right, we're going to start this story. We'll probably be able to finish this one. It's called Daphne, so we're going to go from there. Daphne was one of those independent, love and marriage-hating young huntresses who are met with so often in the mythology stories. She is said to have been Apollo's first love. It is not strange that she fled from him. One unfortunate maiden after another, beloved of the gods, had to kill her child secretly or be killed herself. That sounds fantastic. The best such a one could expect was exile, and many women thought that was worse than death. The ocean nymphs who visited Prometheus on the crag of the Caucasus spoke only of the most ordinary common sense when they said to him, "May you never behold me sharing the couch of a god. May none of the dwellers in heaven draw near to me ever. Such love as the high gods know, from whose eyes no one can hide. May that never be mine. To war with a god lover is not war, it is a despair." That's great. Daphne would have agreed completely, but indeed she did not want any mortal lovers either. Her father, the river god Peneus, was greatly tired because she refused all the handsome and eligible men who wooed her. He would scold her and gently and lament, "Am I never to have a grandson?" But when she threw her arms around him and coaxed him, "Father dearest, let me be like Diana," he would yield, and she would be off to the deep woods, blissful in her freedom. But alas, Apollo saw her, and everything ended for her. She was hunting, her dress short to the knee, her arms bare, her hair in wild disarray. Nevertheless, she was enchantingly beautiful, Apollo thought. What she not look like properly dressed and with her hair nicely arranged? The idea made the fire that was devouring his heart blaze up, even more fiercely, and he started off in pursuit. Daphne fled, and she was an excellent runner. Even Apollo, for a few minutes, was hard put to overtake her. Still, of course, he soon gained. As he ran, he sent his voice ahead of him, entreating her, persuading her, reassuring her. "Do not fear," he called. "Stop and find out who I am. No rude rustic or shepherd. I am the Lord of Delphi, and I love you." Love's a big word, man. But Daphne flew on, even more frightened than before. If Apollo was indeed following her, the case was hopeless. But she was determined to struggle to the very end. It had all but come. She felt his breath upon her neck. But there, in front of her, the trees opened, and she saw her father's river. She screamed to him, "Help me, father, help me!" At the woods, a dragging numbness came upon her. Her feet seemed rooted in the earth. She had been so swiftly speeding over. Bark was enclosing her. Leaves were sprouting forth, and she had been changed into a tree. It's the second story about getting changed into a tree, man? Is this everybody just gets turned into trees? Is that what it is? That's great. Apollo watched the transformation with dismay and grief. "Oh, fairest of maidens, you are lost to me," he mourned. "You're a tree now. But at least you shall be my tree. With your leaves my victors shall wreath your brows. You shall have your part in all my triumphs." Apollo and his laurel, that's what the tree is, was she turned into a laurel, said to be joined together whenever songs are sung and stories told. This beautiful shining leaf tree seemed to nod at its waving head in happy content. Wow, that's great. So trees, everybody gets turned into trees. These weren't so bad, these stories, I think. But trees, I guess it's not the worst thing to get turned into, I suppose. But it seems like, or if you would, when you get turned into a tree, if you maintain like any kind of sensibility about yourself, or you do lose all that and just become tree, do you really is your soul removed? Or are you just now tree forever? Anyway, thanks for coming to see me. Let me know if you like this stuff. The mythology stuff seems to be pretty interesting. I like it. But until next time, have a good day.